and people are coming from all over the world to join us. Now, the basic concept of what is ClimateSafe Villages is so simple. It is about sustainable living combined with climate change, resilience building, and survival.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Climate Emergency Forum. My name is Regina, and I'll be your host as we discuss ClimateSafe Villages. We have a special guest tonight, Lawrence Wollersheim, and Lawrence is Executive Director of Job One for Humanity. He's involved in all aspects of Job One for Humanity's mission, including global warming research analysis. He has many decades of experience in social advocacy litigation, and we're really looking forward to hearing all about Job One for Humanity and the wonderful things that Lawrence has done and will continue to do in his quest to save the planet and everyone on it. And I'm going to waste no time, and I'm going to hand it straight over to Lawrence. Lawrence, we're really happy to have you with us. Please share with us, what is Job One for Humanity? What is its mission, and how can people who are watching learn more and support it?
Thank you, Regina. Job One is basically a climate change think tank that focuses on analysis of not just a single area of climate change, like ice or soils or forests. We look at all of the studies, and then we apply systems thinking and something new called dialectical metasystemic thinking, which is very new. It came out of a Harvard professor. And we look back at all these studies and we look for omissions, we look for patterns that have been missed, we look for errors, and we publish what we analyze in an uncensored way. Now, one of the best things that's come out of the think tank is we started looking at the data, and we saw that we're not making enough progress to handle climate change without severe unavoidable consequences, which means that any climate program that doesn't have a climate change preparation, adaptation, and resilience building element to it, any solution at this stage, because we're so far behind the eight ball, is inadequate and is dangerous, actually dangerous to our common future as humanity. So out of that realization that there are these now unavoidable severe consequences, we decided that we had to create something, and we created the ClimateSafe Village Project. It was done like everything we do at the think tank. We spent years researching what makes intentional communities or villages fail, what makes them succeed. One of our members has 40 years of experience with intentional communities and did a lot of this research. And out of this research, we then started to even flesh out the idea more and more. And then we launched it just recently, I think 3 or 4 weeks, the website finally went up, and people are coming from all over the world to join us. Now, the basic concept of what is ClimateSafe Villages is so simple. It is about sustainable living combined with climate change, resilience building, and survival. So many of the 1,200 known intentional communities right now are doing good sustainability work and good work on human nature and living equitably, but they're not climate aware enough to be climate resilient. There are 10,000 eco-villages around the world right now that they are doing great jobs in their areas of conservation and climate mitigation, but they're not doing very well in climate resilience and climate survival. So this whole idea of ClimateSafe Village was to create an open source series of models that could grow and be shared around the world because we don't have a lot of time to get this done. There can't be a bunch of egos and corporate profit making, all this stuff stuck in the middle, because it has to be done in a nonprofit model. And so we created this and we put it out, and that's the first part of it. Now, who's getting involved is really interesting. Generally, it's people who understand the climate's really bad. Okay, our 7,000 members at Job One, we don't censor anything. We put a sign on our site. This is not for children under 16. Let them be young people. This is an adult matter. But the people coming to ClimateSafe Villages are people from all over the world who pretty much have seen it, experienced it, or know or sense. It's not just the wise that read the science. There's a whole group of people that intuitively sense this is going the wrong way. And I need to protect my family and my friends, and I need to do something. So the people that are coming to us are, one, people that pretty much know that things aren't right. Two, they're generally progressives. And three, we're getting a lot of parents. I'll give you an example of one. One woman has two young girls. Another woman has an older daughter. And I've never seen such motivation from the mothers and fathers who are looking at their children's next 10 or 20 or 30 years and going, we're in the wrong place. We are not ready for this. We have to become resilient. We have to get into a community where we'll help them survive and they'll help us survive. It's been amazing to watch the stories of the people. We have people coming from, we have one family that's looking and targeting Inverness, Scotland, another couple families and some individuals targeting the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I myself and a group of people are heading to the Bellingham, Washington area, because we spent about 4 years and 20 some weeks traveling around in the US and consulting with others in different countries. And we created a list of high risk, low risk areas around the world. And we just didn't do it for progressives. Conservatives have the right, even if they're denying climate today, they have the right to protect their children and families. So we mapped out a bunch of places where if you're a conservative, you're going to feel much better. So that's the kind of the core of the ClimateSafe Village model. The open source part of it is very important because everything we do is about equipping individuals, families, businesses, and communities to become more resilient to make it through this. And it's the reason behind it is very simple. We won't make it alone. No matter how smart you are as an individual or your small group is, you're never going to be able to put together enough resources, enough skill sets. Maybe in the beginning for the first 5 or 10 years, around 2025, our research says that we're going to start crossing some more tipping points very quickly. In the years 2025 to 2031, we're going to watch whatever you're seeing happening with the climate now, it's going to get dramatically worse very fast. Hansen predicted this when he predicted the first phase of runaway global warming was when we crossed 386 ppm. Well, this is the second phase of global warming, around 420 to 450 ppm, right in that range. We put ourselves at a temperature level that's really dangerous. But in the first phase, yeah, maybe you can by yourself survive well for 10 or 15 years. But once this thing hits its what I call near exponential curves of climate change consequences, building upon more consequences, feeding more consequences, if you are not in a well-organized, well-prepared group, working with a local community, helping them to prepare, your chances of surviving what I call the worst phase of climate change is when you have 4 billion people around the world who are living in dead zones where they can't grow food and they can't survive, migrating, they're hungry, they're starving, they're desperate. And we've done nothing. Our governments have done nothing to really address this, to be open about it, to start preparing for it. And Climate Safe Villages is a small effort of a group of dedicated people, a team, saying we need to bypass the government that's doing nothing, and we need to act to start to figure out these problems, to do it in a humankind, equitable, and just way. But we need to start now, and we need to bring all the talent we can possibly find in right now. Now, my last thing in the introduction is there is hope here. This is going to be a very painful path filled with hardship from the consequences we can no longer avoid. We need to be honest with people, but we can't become, in my mind, doomers or post-doomers, that it's all gone, it's useless, do nothing. That's not true. We've created a long dialectical study that shows that if you chase the consequences 3 levels down, there's going to be counteractions that are going to work against total human annihilation. So basically, my last thing to say, there's hope because there's a pathway, but we need to seize it. We need to do 2 things at once. We need to get our governments to reduce global fossil fuel immediately and radically, and we need to work together immediately to start these resilience, preparation, adaptation programs on steroids. Because if we don't, we'll suffer more and needlessly. And I don't know about you guys, I hate suffering needlessly. I hate suffering more. I have learned that prudence and looking ahead, planning ahead is how we do this. And if you're of a mindset like that, we ask everybody around the world, bring your knowledge, bring your resources, and join the Climate Safe Village effort, either in your own location, urban or rural, or virtually. We're online.
Thank you, Lawrence. A lot of what you shared, it was terrifying, at the same time hopeful. I'm sure a lot of us have been having conversations. I know for myself, I've been having impromptu conversations just casually with friends about building just such a community that you're speaking about. And to be honest, I really had no idea that a movement was afoot to create these. So I think it's really, really exciting. And I just can't wait to hear more. And I want to turn it over to Peter. I know that you two are well acquainted. Peter, why don't you share with us your thoughts on what Lawrence just shared with us?
Yeah, Lawrence has a great ability to hit all the nails on the heads all at the same time. And it's always good to hear him discuss his plans and projects. There's 2 aspects. I've noticed that you've got a recent article on Job One for Humanity's site, which is an absolutely brilliant site. It's got to be one of the total best. And one of the articles is on the invisible hand of the fossil fuel cartel. So I wanted to hear you on that. But another thing was, particularly listening to Regina as well, that I remember years ago a scientific article being written saying that we're not going to have environmental sustainability or environmental effects without building a community. And so what you just said totally took me back to that. So there's a couple of aspects there, Lawrence, that I'd like to hear you on.
I'll start with the fossil fuel, the invisible hand of the global fossil fuel cartel. Our governments aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. But why aren't they doing what they're supposed to be doing? There's 2 reasons. The demand from the bottom has been thwarted because of fossil fuel industry disinformation campaigns. They're the $28 trillion a year largest corporation in the world, largest conglomerate in the world is fossil fuel. Actually, probably closer to about 32 trillion now, but that's bigger than the US GDP. If you remember what the cigarette companies did with a much smaller amount of money, they kept us thinking that cigarettes were healthy, didn't cause lung cancer, wouldn't hurt you for over 100 years because they had disinformation campaigns, they bought think tanks, they used undue influence and political money to keep us from thinking properly. Now, just take a look at this. The fossil fuel company is thousands of times larger fossil fuel cartel than the cigarette company. They dominate. They own so much stock in the media. They have corrupted our ability to think coherently from the bottom. This is the citizens of the world to demand our politicians act. So they're not getting pushed from the bottom, but at the same time that the politicians aren't getting pushed at the bottom, the fossil fuel companies are directly corrupting our politicians with money, undue influence, unfair influence, and they are keeping them from regulating the necessary fossil fuel cuts. They're sustaining subsidies in the middle of a climate crisis, and they're keeping them from liability. They've got these politicians so financed, so locked into their own little job and their own little pension, that we're not being served at the top, we're not being served through the bottom. So the real cause of why climate change, in my mind, hasn't happened in 60 years is 60 years of nefarious, insidious, continuous, extremely well-financed fossil fuel interference with our ability to think critically about an emergency that's going to kill most of us off. That's my feeling on the fossil fuel industry. Going to community. Community, there's a balance between community and individuals that's healthy. And whenever we lose the balance of community-individual interaction, things don't go well. We are individuals that thrive and do well in community. Our civilization has grown in community. And we also have in our climate community a lot of fragmentation, which again, a lot of it comes from the fossil fuel industry feeding false information to some of our biggest environmental groups. They're operating blindly on the IPCC summary climate reports that are so underestimated, and come up with these cook the book solutions of, if we get carbon capture in the year 2050, it's okay, we don't have to cut our fossil fuel now. Who does all this stuff benefit? So we have to build true community and get the disinformation out of our own climate community. Does that help, Peter?
Excellent. Thanks very much. I will be using that recording myself, that's for sure.
Oh,
Thanks,
well,
Lawrence.
thank you. You can tell I feel passionately about the future of my children and my friends in this civilization.
Yeah, you really understand it at a lot of depth.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you too, Lawrence, because, you know, this is something that I've brought up before in the past, how we have become such an atomized society and how this is all going according to plan. Because if we are not in community, we are at each other's throats, we are not helpful to each other, we get distracted about what the bigwigs are doing, and we lose hope. We are living in despair. We are living in a place of addiction. This is all very, very good for the big interest, and especially, of course, the fossil fuel industry. So I really, really love what you're saying about community and how incredibly important it is. And I want to turn it over to Paul. Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, quick question. You've mentioned 4 ClimateSafe Village models. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between the models?
Yes. Our most popular model is, we call it the urban stay where you are. In other words, wherever you are, you start building resilience. You get in an organic garden, you start contacting with friends, you swap food from different organic gardens, you get your solar on the roof, you get some water capture going, you go down in the basement and you swap out your sump pump for an industrial sump pump 4 times larger than the one you have now because of the rain bombs that are coming. Otherwise, you're going to be flooding out your basement. You go and get the best air filter you can because of the wildfire smoke. You do whatever you can exactly where you are to harden, resilient, make it more resilient and hardened to the things you're going to most likely face. But then in your local community, you reach out to others. On the first level, cooperation and mutual purchases of things that you're going to need that are too expensive for individuals. And then for mutual defense and support and motivation, because support is 90% of why anyone is successful in anything. If you look back at your life, you will find a support network when you were shining. the amount of work, the real work to harden our communities, especially the urban communities, it's hard to stay motivated. But if you have other people and you're meeting regularly and having some food and some wine and working out the problems of equity, how are we going to deal with when people come with nothing? You know, these challenges in front of us, it does something to you. That's the first kind. The second kind is rural. Whereas if you're living in a rural area or a farm area, you just build right out there and do it right where you are. The third kind is a virtual community where you're online and we're sharing information and sharing motivation and locations. Like we just had someone come back from Inverness, Scotland, who's sharing all the local data for the next people that want to go buy land there. All of the stuff that you would need to know, checklists and everything else. The last model is kind of a hybrid where you actually go and you build from scratch. This is what we're going to do eventually in Bellingham. You buy a large section of land, you get a net zero, climate educated architect, because hardening homes and buildings for the climate, the high winds that are coming, most people don't deal with the wind factor. The wind factor wherever you live is going to grow and grow and grow. So your homes have to be wind safe, fire safe, rain safe, flooding safe. You know, you get to all these lists. Plus, you have to be able to endure extreme heat. You're an adult. If you're older, you got to have a basement to cool off, because what if everything breaks down? So that last version, we're going to go in from scratch and design a community from the ground up, from the roads, the placement of the homes on the sides of the hills, south-facing, a total net zero, total sustainable, permaculture, full recycle community, ground up, and let that be a model and share the architectural designs, share everything. Because we need thousands and thousands of these around the world to become beacons of light after we get through this mess. Because they would be living examples that other people could see and say, maybe there's an alternative way that'll work for us for our future. Does that help, Paul, give you an idea?
Yes. Now, you mentioned something like 10,000 eco-villages around the world. Is there an optimal size, an optimal number of people? Because if you get too many people, it could get very unwieldy, and you could lose sight of what's going on. So, I mean, often tribes in the past, hunter-gatherer tribes were, 100 people sort of maximum, 120 maybe. Beyond that, things were less resilient. So is there a number? Have you looked at numbers of people? And also, I guess you want to have people of different professions. I mean, you need sort of dentists and engineers and medical doctors and stuff. So is this one of the things you're looking at to help these eco-villages become more resilient, sort of the mix of people and skills?
Yes. It's an open debate on what's the ideal size. Okay, there's anthropologists who will, side with you. The gentleman who wrote the book Climate Apocalypse, it was Henson and not Henson. I'll remember who it is. He says it's got to be under 500 people. We're going to start out with a few hundred acres and probably an initial group of 25 to 50 people. We might grow to 100 or 200, but I see more of a spoke effect where you get to a certain size, you want to keep the intimacy and what we call personal democracy, a very active form of democracy. And you spin off and they form hubs, but at the same time, you're working with the local communities. So you're not isolated from the local community, you're interacting with it. So you have access in the beginning to doctors and auto mechanics and all those specialty skills that you need. But eventually, these communities in their spoke form will be collaborating, where a doctor might go to one or two of the 3 communities and travel between, that are close to each other. So I hope that hybrid kind of answers both of it. It's an evolving process.
Yeah, I mean, and what about security issues? Because if everything's open and suddenly there's food shortages and so on, there's going to be a lot of chaos and a lot of roving sort of bands of people trying to survive. I'm thinking of the billionaire bunkers, okay? One of their biggest issues is they want a security force, but there's no way they can ensure that the security force might eventually not turn on them at some point. So, I mean, have you thought about those sort of practical issues?
Yeah, we have. It's more of a problem depending upon your location. If you're near the 45th parallel, it's a 10-year, 15-year, somewhere in there problem. If you're down between the 35th parallel north and south, it's a problem right now. Okay, it's a growing problem right now. Everything's just going to get more destable. Our initial solution is we have such tight connections to the local communities, and we prepared them for this, that the local community has some reserves to help people coming into the community. We can't lose our human kindness and our compassion while trying to save ourselves. Okay, that is not how you become a beacon of light, and that's not how we're going to build a better world in the future when we get through this. But there's all these ethical decisions about who and how do you help starving, desperate people who are coming to you. So that is an ongoing section in our forum, the Climate Forum, and we're building an advisory group just to deal with these ethical justice issues. That isn't clear. That is the toughest question I am facing right now. Ethical justice questions for people who haven't prepared, who didn't create this, but are suffering just the same.
Lawrence, I think to me, that's one of the bigger questions. And I love this idea of the intentional communities, and I love the beacon of hope, but there's also like the cynic in me. If we just look at COVID, for example, I can see in my very own neighborhood, I live in New York City, I can see people are a little unhinged, to be quite frank. I mean, it has been so very destabilizing. And the lawlessness that I still see all over New York City, and especially in my neighborhood, is incredible. People have changed. People, I don't know if it's trauma or what it is, but this is just, and I want to say just, I know people died, but I have to say that I think that what we're going to see with the climate is probably going to be worse. So how in the world are we going to deal with these people who do become unhinged and are very disruptive?
Our future is much worse. You're hoping that the general social institutions will last 10 or 15 years, so that if they're mentally unhinged, there are doctors and police that can get them into medical support. If they're criminally unhinged, you're hoping that there's police and National Guard that will temporarily stabilize us as we go through very rapid changes. But there's going to be a point where even those systems break down, and your community is on its own. But again, we have to do, if nothing else, the principle of the least harm and most good. How can these communities do the least harm and most good when they are confronted with people who haven't prepared or didn't cause this? But if we think ahead and we build surpluses up, we're never going to have enough to cover everyone. Okay, that's not going to happen. But if we have some surpluses, we are wise, we are strong, and we are kind of like an Aikido mind sense, where you're gentle but strong and present. We'll make the discriminating good decisions we can, but we can't do all the good. We can only do the good that's within our capabilities. But at least we have to have the ethical position that we will do everything within our surpluses and within our capabilities, so that at least we're doing the good that can be done. That's the best I can give you. This is the biggest problem facing climate safe villages. It's not building, it's not recruiting, it's not financing. It is, what do we do at that terrible 10 to 15 year point?
Just really quickly for our audience, and to be quite frank with myself as well, you mentioned people in the 35th and the 45th parallel. Could you just give us the geographic, like which states or countries you were speaking to when you mentioned that?
If you look at a global map, the 45th parallel in the United States passes through Portland, across parts of Montana, a little bit of North Dakota, parts of Minnesota, across pretty much of the Upper Peninsula. It's one of the biggest areas, and then it crosses into a little bit of Vermont or Hampshire and a bit of New Maine. Only 5%, I estimate about 5% of the world's surface area is what I call climate safer. There's no climate safe areas. Everybody's going to have stuff. But if you're in that sweet zone, you're good. If you get above the 50th, 55th parallel, it's really going to get bad because the heat's going to be 2 to 4 times worse. And the permafrost is going to go, the roads are going to go, the gas lines are going to go, the infrastructure is going to go very fast. And if you're in the 35th parallel north to the 35th parallel south, it's the equatorial band around the planet, they are going to suffer. Their crops, their environments, their governments are weak already, and they are not going to be able to take all the failed crops, all of the starving people. Those are the areas that those people have to move. The people that are understanding what's happening, they have to move quickly and legally into the countries that have created this problem. We have to somehow create an ethical awareness in our own country and other countries. We did this, we did most of this. Just like we have to pay restitution in a car accident, we need to pay justice restitution to these innocent people who are just trying to make a living and just trying to survive and love and live.
You know, we did a program a while ago on climate reparations, and this was a big part of our focus, climate justice. A lot of people aren't on board.
You're right about that. But you've got to start somewhere. You work with the people that are there. You show a good example. You hold your position. And if you're surviving well, you'll attract others, and the ideas will expand. And now there's a group that you're never going to be able to get to. I do not spend time with them. I let them be. I have to do the good that I can do today in the world. That's it.
Well, you know what, Lawrence? I think you just summed up the entire essence of why this is so important. Do the best that we can do. We must do the best that we can do. One of the things that I'd like to do is direct our audience to your website. Could you share that information with us?
Okay. The website is ClimateSafeVillages.org. Just the way it sounds, ClimateSafe. ClimateSafe is one word. VillagesConnect.org. Our manager there, Lenora, does a great job. They have a forum, a invitation-only forum. If you go to ClimateSafe Villages, ask to join the forum. There's some very interesting people. We're inviting climate science fiction writers that are going into the forum. Climate book authors are going in. The climate science fiction people, they are envisioning things we never even thought of. It's quite interesting to watch this new category called it's called Cli-Fi, climate science fiction. I don't know if you've read it. There's some very interesting books in it. But again, ClimateSafeVillages.org. We welcome your help, your experience, and your knowledge, and we hope to share what we have with you.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. This has been an incredibly enlightening show. I have really enjoyed it. And I just want to thank you so much. And thank you so much, Peter and Paul, for weighing in with your amazing and insightful questions. Everyone out there, it's time to get serious, and it's time for us to do the best we can, to be the best people that we can to as many people as we can. As our guest Lawrence said, it's about community. It's about being together. This is how we're going to survive. So I want to thank you, as always, for being with us. Those of you who are subscribed, I want to thank you for your wonderful support. And those of you who are subscribing right after this show, thank you. And we'll see you next time at the Climate Emergency Forum.